And now, please welcome founder and senior managing director of Certares, Greg O'Hara, in discussion with Skift CEO and founder, Rafat Ali.
Okay, the last interview of the Global Forum, we tried to have the most blue sky, interesting to end, and some of it will be in travel, some of it won't be in travel, or some of it you would assume would not be in travel. And so Greg O'Hara, he won't ever say this himself, we just came out with the most powerful list in the travel industry. Matthew was on the list. You're also on the list as one of the most powerful people in the travel industry. And Greg runs Certares. I think most of you know who they are. Has a very orchestral view of all of what's happening in the travel industry, from particularly starting with business travel, which is how Certares got born. I don't know if all of you know. Greg bought Amex GBT in 2012, the same year Skift started.
Yes.
And obviously now has a portfolio of companies all around. Recently, you may have heard, you may know from, was it 3-4 years ago, the Hertz deal that you were in as well. But isn't just US, it's a global portfolio. So that's the scene setting, Greg.
Okay.
Thank you again for doing this. You did
Happy
this
to do
last year as well. And so let's start big pictures. Business travel is what we talked about.
Yes.
Slowdown in leisure.
Yes.
Business is booming. What's your sense today of where business travel is?
So before I answer that question, it would appear that one of my family relatives worked at Skift for the way I was ranked in that survey. So thank you to whoever did the ranking. And
totally objective.
I'll find you on my Christmas card list later on. So business travel right now is in a great environment. Obviously, from 2020 to kind of 2023, not such a good environment. We're seeing businesses return to market. A lot of businesses, in fact, people in the room and other places have concerns about growing their business. And in order to grow their business, they have to have sales. In order to do sales, they have to go on the road. We were talking backstage to a gentleman from Microsoft who's, they're going to be building 1 data center a week or something like this. Right. That's going to result in 20, 30, 50 people going on the road to find a location, to negotiate with governments, to get water rights, to do all those things. Any of you who've been in the airports have seen the return of the business traveler. And so I think business travel is, on a demand basis, is well on the way back. I think you saw that by the recognition by one of the major US airlines that their strategy of not embracing business travel distribution hadn't really worked.
Right.
And so they now have to come back and grab the business traveler because you're seeing weakness in some areas of the leisure market.
Yeah, Matthew just talked about that on stage as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay, good for him. So we agree on something. And so I think that's made a lot of Matthew's constituents happy that they've come back and recognized that their policies for distribution have to change because you don't have unfettered demand for the front the front cabins from leisure travelers. In leisure, we're not really seeing the same wholesale change. In leisure, we see a unabated demand from the highest end customer. I think this summer, we broke every record from America to most European countries. And you see some countries that Americans haven't traditionally gone to filled with Americans all summer at the very high end. I think you'll see a big build out in Portugal, for instance, of high-end hotels to meet American demand. The prices that we're seeing in places like the Amalfi Coast and in attractive areas of France have never been seen before, and there doesn't seem to be any limit. We're seeing some weakness in Germany, for instance, in the mid-market. We see no weakness in the Middle East of any kind. We see a lot of people going to Africa. The regional conflicts that you're seeing all over the place tend to have an immediate impact, but not a staying impact on travelers. And so I like the general business climate for both business and leisure travel right now. The cruise industry is fantastic. Like,
Talk about the cruise industry. You're invested in it. You were.
we still are.
You still are.
Yeah, so we have investments in the expedition area and the river cruising area still. We sold a company called AMA Waterways to a private equity buyer earlier on this year. It's a fantastic company. It would have been nice to keep it forever, but that's not the business that we're in. And we found a new good steward of that, and I think that business is going to go on and do greater things. I'm going to be sorry not to own it going forward.
Are you seeing new? I mean, one of the things about cruise industry always that they worry about is newer people coming in versus the repeat buyers, which is a reverse of the problem that a lot of other sectors have, is that they want repeat buyers coming again, and cruise has repeat buyers but not enough new people coming in.
So I would tell you that is changing. I think if you took a look, and again, I haven't read them myself, but if you took it, I'll use Royal Caribbean as an example. If you took a look at their data, you would see new and, more importantly, younger buyers of cruise coming in. And I think you'll see that represented by new ships getting launched that are geared towards a slightly different traveler. Now you've got a lot of different ships. You've seen my pal Manfredi Lefebvre reinvigorate Crystal Cruises in a way that should attract a broad variety of people. That's interesting, integrated with a company called Abercrombie and Kent, right? So he's not only offering on-ship activities, but off-ship activities as well. I think you'll see the cruise lines get very, very interested in off-ship activities. So I think if you wanted to be in a business that was servicing somebody with really high demand, being in the DMC business that serviced cruise companies would be a really good business to be in over the next decade.
Very interesting. You are an investor in TripAdvisor.
Yes.
Matt just came off the stage.
Yep.
What would you tell him not to do?
So that's not really my job, right?
Or what will you tell him to do?
Also not my job. Our management teams run their own businesses. And so we make suggestions to a manager sometimes. But I think there's a fallacy in the way investors operate, that they tell management teams what to do or what not to do. That tends to be inside of a corporation, right? Not a boss tells an employee what to do. What we try to do is figure out ideas that maybe they don't have a purview on and give them other things to do. I learned a long time ago that if I own a business and I tell the manager what to do and the manager doesn't like what I've told them, whether it's right or wrong, that idea somehow fails in its execution. So it really needs to be management's idea. But I'll try to give you a better instructive answer to. I just want to make sure I go on the record that I'm not telling people what to do. I think maybe a better way to answer the question is, listen, TripAdvisor has millions and millions of people coming to it every month, every week, every day. It's in 3 businesses. You've got a business that takes restaurant reservations called The Fork, which is largely the biggest one in Europe. Right. You have a great business that does activities, as is linked into the DMC world, called Viator. And you have what we call core TripAdvisor, which is the reviews business and the referrals business. I think each one of those businesses kind of moves in different directions at any given time. So let me just pick one. I think the activities business is got uninterrupted growth. So we would encourage him to find creative ways of investing in that business. He also has to operate within the confines of a public company, right, which means he has quarterly guidance to hit and whatnot. So what he's able to do may be limited by his public company status. I think Viator is a great business. I think The Fork has a business that is really useful to a lot of people, but I think we probably have to have some business model changes there, possibly some combinations or some aggregation to better serve the clients. And then in core TripAdvisor, you know, a lot of that depends on what Google does on any
Yes.
given day, right?
As an investor,
Nelson's sitting in the front row, so I got to be careful. So I can't say they're a great company, Google, and we would beg you to be kind to all my companies.
I missed Nelson. He's sitting right here. Oh, okay. Let's talk shit about Google. No, I'm kidding.
You're not going to get me to do that.
But as an investor, you don't really, I mean, how do you think about that from an investment opportunity perspective? Of like your business is so dependent on a third party.
It is. It doesn't really depend on the third party. It depends on what the third party does, right? So if the third party changes its algorithm or does something different, it also is dependent on the other side on people like Booking.com and Expedia, right? So it sits in the middle. I think what we want to do is keep all of the reviews and the people coming. We want to keep those things relevant and new and fresh, right? I think what we want to do is be able to do interesting things with the data. Like, you know, Google and Facebook and Microsoft are experts at, you know, if I text you, I'm looking at, on WhatsApp, I'm looking at a new pair of jeans, and you and I have never talked, not done, but I text you on WhatsApp, and I don't know whether it's by circumstance or by coincidence, and I say I'm looking at a pair of jeans from a particular brand, I will get in my Instagram feed within an hour all these ads for that particular.
Yeah, Meta will deny it, but that's true.
It happens to me, right? My son is absolutely convinced that they listen to his phone, but I don't know that they do that or not. But the point is they monetize the data that they collect somehow, some way.
Somewhere, yeah.
And I don't know how. I'm not convincing them. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. I think it's fantastic because I actually want to see those ads in some ways. So I think TripAdvisor has so much data. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if you were a hotel person and in New York City, and I know on TripAdvisor I clicked on your hotel, I clicked on these different hotels. Wouldn't you like to know how that cohort behaved and why they bought my particular hotel or why they bought another? Was it price? Was it location? Was it size of room? Was it services? Because we can tell as you're looking around why someone might do that. To collect that information and to present it in a relevant way to a supplier is, I think, gold. So as an investor, I think that's valuable. How you get that and how much money you have to spend to be able to do that are two different things.
Sticking to experiences, because you talked Viator, a lot of interest in experiences as the next frontier, not meaning tours and activities, so type experiences, the world that Viator plays in. Versus the experience on multi-day tours, Abercrombie and Kent type businesses, the package stuff. Do you think the experience, the attention is misplaced? On like it should be more on the multi-day versus the day tour, or does it matter? Or I mean, you like the multi-day tour world?
I do. I like both. Yeah. So. A big problem. Matthew and I decide. I'm going to pick on Matthew. Matthew and I decide we're going to. I think Matthew's coming to Perth, Australia, right? Yeah. And for a WTTC meeting, and for whatever reason, we find ourselves with a couple hours downtime when we're sitting in Perth or Broome or somewhere like that. How do we figure out what we're going to do with that time? So there's, I think the individual tour packages or the Get Your Guides, the Viators of the world, those are very good at in-destination demand. Right. Let's figure out what we want to do this afternoon with the time that we have. I think also the source market is important. You know, Americans like to have their trips organized and to know what they're doing at certain times. Not everybody's like that, right? When someone else goes on a trip, they like to have a lot of free time and come up with where they want to go. No different than if you and I were on a boat cruising around the Mediterranean, we might want not to decide what time and where we eat every day, right? So we might want to figure that out at the last minute. I think that the offering for someone to buy something, I don't see the average customer sitting at home and constructing all their activities, all of them, with Get Your Guide and Viator, or I don't see Abercrombie and Kent planning every minute of every day for you. So I think they kind of work together, right? And so you want to buy a corpus of activity, probably on your trip, and then you want to fill it in with the activities that you want to do. Might be raining. So we might not want to go hot air ballooning, right? We might want to do something else, and we might want to leave that to where the destination. Does that make sense?
I lost you for a second there. But in the multi-day tour world, which I actually personally like a lot, that sector, I think it's one of the last sectors to not be digitized.
Yeah.
It's the one that needs to come online. And also, it's where the world is moving. They want to be, people want group experience.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be where a lot of the world is going. And it seems like tour companies are generally undervalued for the value that they provide, and a lot of growth is ahead of them. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, listen, I don't just think tour companies are undervalued. I think right now, travel writ large in the public market is not being rewarded for its earnings. I think.
Why is that?
Because we don't make vaccines right now, and we don't have mRNA technology, and we don't have a bunch of other technology. I think that the public markets tend to, the average investor, and you can think about your own portfolio as you invest your money, the average investor invests at the top and not the bottom.
Right.
And the average investor sells at the bottom, not the top, right? And so what ends up happening is it takes a while for those earnings to come in. But any public position I hold, I have an analyst from one of the major financial firms call me, I don't know, once or twice a month, asking how can it possibly be trading this way, given that the earnings are a lot better. Hertz is a good example. TripAdvisor is a decent example. Amex GBT for a while was a decent example. I don't think anyone in this room would have ever said that business travelers wouldn't eventually return to traveling around the globe.
Unfortunately, a bunch of us did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, shame on all of you. No, I'm just I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, we do global travel at Amex GBT for a lot of banks. And a lot of banks decided that they would keep their people home. The minute the first bank went on the road, when investment bankers went back to start seeing their clients, all the banks returned to the road. There's no company that can afford not to visit clients if their competitors are visiting clients. It just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
So I didn't see that. It's easy to believe that there won't be a reversion to the norm at any point in time you're in a crisis. But there almost always is a reversion to the norm. Like if you look at the travel industry for the last 50 years, anytime there's been a change in the 6 to 8% growth that the travel agent gets, whether it be bird flu or the global financial crisis, there's a blip. It's almost always reverted to the mean. So we have a period of accelerated growth, which you've seen post-pandemic. And so it's reverting to its mean. It'll return to the 6 to 7% growth, and it'll have to do a catch-up. So it's now it won't grow at the same 22 to 24% it has in the last couple of years, but it needed to do that to get back to the growth curve that it reverts to.
Okay, we have, let's move to this one topic that you and I talked about that I think will blow people's minds. You're very focused on, people talk about wellness, and you and I, everybody talks about wellness, but you have a different, a more evolved understanding of it that you are putting, that you want, you tell the longevity and what's happening there and how you think about that and how it relates to travel.
Sure. So I'll go on a bit of a diatribe. For those of you who don't know me, if I had done this 5 years ago, I would have barely fit in this chair. I was probably 300 pounds or something like that at the time. And so I embarked on a series of personal choices to try to lower my weight, live a healthier life. And so that resulted in me doing a bunch of things in 2018. So for instance, I was in the Ozempic trial in 2018, right? Did the stupidest thing I ever did, knew it worked, didn't buy the stock, right? Can you imagine? Because it didn't occur to me that I could use that information for financial gain. So what ended up happening was I started getting interested in the way people do things. So there's a bunch of very good European wellness facilities. One is called SHA or SHA, which is a Spanish company. The other one's an Austrian company called Lanzerhof, and the third is a French company called Chanel. I'm not, by the way, if I've excluded anybody in the room who's in this business, I just had to pick 3. And every summer, people like Matthew, myself, and other people struggle to get reservations at these places. So I realize there's a demand and supply mismatch. So anytime there's a demand and supply mismatch, I start to get interested. So what I did is I started to think, what goods and services do these people offer? So the first thing, and they do a pretty good job if you want to get rid of your wrinkles and you want to feel better and you want to lose 5 kilos. I have a joke with Philippe Chirec, who some of you know, that he's lost about 600 kilos, but it's the same 5 kilos every year for the last every many years. So the first thing is to get yourself to a weight that makes sense. So metabolics are an important part of that, and thank God we have all these new metabolic treatments that allow you to be a normal weight. The second piece is longevity. So I want it, now that I'm a normal weight and I'm gonna have a chance of living longer, I now want to live a longer life. And for those of you who are interested in this, if you follow Instagram, there is an unlimited number of things on Instagram that will make you live longer.
YouTube as well.
YouTube, same thing.
Yeah.
Probably TikTok as well. And so I'm making this up, but I would say about 80% of those, maybe you live longer, maybe you don't, but about 20% of those, like hypoxia training, and a bunch of other things that you can do, Nanovi, those kinds of things, actually will make you live longer. Like they've proven to make you live longer with KPIs. About 80% of those things, some of you will swear by the cold plunge or cryotherapy. That may make you live longer, but we don't know yet. And then the last piece is, now that I've lived longer and I have, and I'm a weight, what's the quality of my life going to be like? And that has to do with mobility training. So for instance, can I move my shoulder properly? Does my back, you notice my terrible posture, does my back move well? Do my hips move well? Sorry for the long intro, but it's necessary.
Okay. This is the point.
And then, so those are the 3 products that'll get offered in the longevity space for travel. The second piece is, before you get there, you need testing. For those of you who haven't done it, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can get your DNA testing done, 6,000 different things, and you can find out you're sensitive to caffeine. You shouldn't eat spinach because it's got histamines in it. Kale is really hard for you to digest. So all these things you think are healthy for you are healthy in general, but not for you. Second is a biome test. So you get your biome tested, and it can tell you how you're processing these things. Third is a bunch of blood tests. So you take those 3 things, and before you go, you have those tests. You arrive at the facility, so when you get there, you can spend a week getting healthy. This is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity for travel, because the arbitrage between the United States, the amount it costs to do these things in the United States, and the amount it costs to do things in a place like Italy. I'll give you an example. Having your DNA tested in the United States might cost you $10,000 with no insurance, because there's no insurance for this stuff. And that lab is done by a spin-off. The best one is a spin-off of a company in Boston, from Harvard, in a company in Boston. So you take a finger prick, it goes to the lab, and that might cost you, let's say, $10,000. In Italy, that same test costs 400 euros, done by the same lab in Boston, right? So I wonder if I can get one of your customers out there to travel to the Amalfi Coast, stay at a Terme, have all this stuff done, and have a great vacation while they get healthy. You're seeing cruise lines look at this, where they're going to take a few cabins and make them into health and wellness cabins. But I think this is going to be, at least for me, we expect to make a 9-figure bet in this space by providing capacity to those who want it. Typically Americans going to Europe or the Middle East or somewhere else to have this stuff done. Middle East is a great opportunity to do this. And we're super excited about this. For those of you who are here or listening.
You're going to get lots of pitches right after this.
That's fine, that's great. We want them. So we've got a pretty good plan right now. We think that the longevity experience has to be married to a destination in some way. It's super boring, by the way, if you've done this, to just sit there and get detox IVs and ozone therapy and whatnot in a bed all day. You want to go do something, go for a hike, see something. So it needs an attraction stapled to it. The other thing is, where you're in a country, let's say like Greece, that has a lot of people during the summer, right? But not a lot of people. These are 365-day enterprises. They keep people employed. It doesn't have to necessarily be in a destination like Rome or Capri or Athens or Mykonos. It can be somewhere that's like Milos or Crete that has a lot of other things to do. So the destinations are really excited about building these things out because they provide durable, high-paying jobs. Because remember, the cheapest way to create a job in the world is still an investment in the travel industry. Right?
Yeah.
And so as people look for ways of creating jobs, especially in Europe and Latin America, Middle East, it's still the cheapest way to create a job.
Okay. That was fascinating, Greg. So a couple of questions. We can add a little bit more time, Brian, a little bit. The Middle East is booming. Will you be investing in that region in the near future?
Yes. Positively, yes.
How should we look at the gyrations of investment? Like, should we read into some of the pullback in Saudi?
No, I don't think so. Like, you mean the investment pullback by the Saudis?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring
Yeah.
to? So listen, that plan was super ambitious to start out with. Maybe it was hyper ambitious, right, to start out with. All they've really done is go from hyper ambitious to super ambitious, right? They're still going to be the largest investor in the space over the next little while.
By all other combined, probably.
Yeah, and so I would read that like everyone here is in a business. We all make plans to do something. They made a plan to do something, and as they start to do it, they're going to tighten that plan and focus their investment on areas that have high returns and high regard. Listen, the domestic market in Saudi for years never really had a option. You couldn't take a domestic vacation. Now it does, and we're seeing people embrace reform like never before. If I can take 2 seconds and give a higher-minded purpose, I get that the world sometimes has some conscientious objections to the way other countries do business, right? That are normal and ordinary in that country. However, in this particular case in Saudi, if you haven't been there, visit, right? I encourage you to do that. If you go to Saudi and you see the reforms that are taking place, and I know you've been.
I was there last week, yeah.
And I know I've been, and you see the reforms that are taking place, the absolute way of stopping those reforms that we all like, right, is to not send people there and to not go. Because if they're not successful with their investing, it won't continue. I want it to continue. So my higher purpose there is I like the reforms of the administration there. Are all of them well placed? No, right? But by and large, they've done a great job at reforming their country. Not an easy thing to do, and we want to encourage them. So we're going to encourage them through investment, and we're going to encourage them through distribution.
The energy there is incredible. If you go.
Listen, I haven't been a place where the people that live in that country like their leader as much as the people who live in Saudi.
Oh yeah, certainly that never happens in our country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like listen, my son came to me, he gets to vote for the first time, he's 18, and we're driving down to college. And he says to me that he's not going to vote in this election because neither choice is good, right? And I said, well, that's not your responsibility. I gave him all the civic-minded stuff.
Also, I'm not your son, by the way, but
yeah, you might agree?
I'll stop there.
Okay, all right. So okay, he thinks neither choice is good. That's his prerogative, right? To think neither choice is good.
Wow, this is a very specific question. What lessons to take from the FTI fallout and how could we avoid it? I don't know if you can comment on that.
Yeah, I can. It could have been avoided by getting the accurate information from the company. So there's not really a lot of fallout. For those of you who don't know, we cut a deal to buy FTI with a family investor to save jobs and avoid bankruptcy by buying the debt from the government that had been given to it during the COVID loans. The company went bankrupt between signing and closing because of a working capital issue, possibly exacerbated by the fact that it was in a poor financial condition. So before we could put the money in, the company filed. So there wasn't really anything for us to do. Unusual situation,
Yes.
to be sure,
Yeah.
but there wasn't much we could do.
Okay. All right. I think we're out of time, but thank you, Greg. This was fascinating.
Anytime.
and I know a lot of people are probably looking to meet you if you have some.
Good luck to you all. We're excited about the travel industry. Thanks.
Thank you.